welcome to our second annual Olin Story Slam. We're so happy that you're here. I'm John Adler. I'm a psychology professor here.
I'm Jillian Epstein. I am not a psychology professor here. I'm a writer person here. Oh, want me to talk
Yeah,
now?
you go.
Oh, and I get to talk. I'm still figuring out my relationship with this microphone. I think it's going okay. Welcome. We're glad to see you. I think my job is ostensibly right now to tell you why stories matter, why we're telling them, and that would probably be a little mind-numbing to listen to. So I'm not going to. I'm going to tell you a story about stories instead. I'm going to just tell you a story. I was trying to think of a story, and since I teach them, you'd think I would have lots of them, but all I had was my kids folding laundry. They were folding laundry at the time. That's what happens when you procrastinate, kids, big kids and small kids. So they were folding laundry, and I said, I have a story about that, but that sucks. I'm going to wait for a better idea, and here I am with the laundry story, so enjoy. So folding laundry in my house. I have a 15-year-old boy, 11-year-old girl. And I realized folding laundry is sort of like the Olympics, but just with two people, and no judges, and in our house, no medals, and my son always wins, and my daughter's not happy about it. And it's weird that he wins because he's doing kind of a crappy job, to put it frankly. But they were headed upstairs for the laundry Olympics to fold their respective bags of laundry the other day. And he said something a little snarky to mess with the other team, like, I'll see you in a while, and she was like, oh, and he went in his room to fold his laundry. I went in there for some reason or another, and I caught him by accident in the act of stuffing all his clothes in impressive little balls into his drawers. He was done super fast, turns out. And my daughter had snuck in behind me. I didn't see her, and she said, I knew it. It was she looked, kind of excited, I have to say. Kind of pissed, but also pretty excited, because this was her moment, I realized, in this story, in this narrative. She was like, justice is going to happen. You could see this story was now about hell raining down on this 15-year-old balling up his clothes child, and she was front and center and ready to enjoy herself. So there was a little pressure, to say something, and I was like, oh, come on, man, all right, take the clothes out, let's fold them. And she was like watching, and he said, why? And I said, oh, yeah, he's 15. This is our time, this is our rebellious time. But it seemed like an easy question, right? Why do you fold your laundry? I was like, I got this. The reason is your clothes will not look wrinkly. They will look great. And he said, well, that's not a problem, because I've been doing it this way for the last 5 years. And you never noticed. And I was like, ooh. And I guess if you wear mostly fleece, he has a point, right? So then our narrative was changing a little bit, where it seemed like, okay, now it's a little bit of a rebellion narrative from my son's point of view, right? No longer is the arm of justice happening. It's rebellion time. It is tell mommy what time it is time. And I had a choice in this narrative about our little fork in the road, right? Of, okay, I could be cool about the balled up 5 years of clothes, or I could take this on, right? So it was interior monologue time. That can happen in a story, right? So I had thoughts. They were interior. That's how it works. Want to watch? It's quiet, though. Look. Yeah. You can't hear it, but it's happening. So he couldn't hear it, but I said to myself, Self, before I take this man-child on about his balled-up collection of fleece, let me think, just for the sake of not being a massive hypocrite, what do I in fact do with my laundry? And then it was a long pause, because I realized when I posed the question, I don't seem to actually fold my laundry, which I didn't know. I thought about it, and it seems that I take it and kind of lovingly flat it out on shelves. But I thought that might not play well if I explain that, because I have a feeling when he's 16, he's going to ask me what I do with my laundry. So that wasn't good. And then my significant other felt a lot more confident when I mentioned my laundry impasse. he actually had a pretty strong reaction I hadn't anticipated. And he said, you know how boys learn to fold laundry like men? And I was like, that's a super weird rhetorical question. I could tell it was rhetorical because clearly I did not know how boys learn to fold laundry like men. Mine had not done so. But I was like, I'll bite because no, I don't know. That's intriguing. And I didn't see the answer coming. And he said, boys learn to fold laundry like men if they get drafted into the KGB marching band. And I was like, oh, okay. So he was clearly drawing on some very specific personal experience with his own past in Russia and his folding. And I went with it for a minute. I was like, he does play the clarinet. I don't know if they need one in the KGB marching band. And it's cold, and it seemed extreme, like it seemed like a long way to go to learn to fold your fleece. So I didn't go that route, but I could tell you how the laundry story ends, whether he folded it or not, but I don't see the point. It's about laundry, friends. It's not a compelling topic. And that might be my implicit point, is that plot often isn't the point of stories. It's perspective. It's the choices we make. It's the characters we choose to follow in the constellation of people that we're dealing with in our lives. And John is now going to brilliantly suture that with something intellectual, because I just get to talk about laundry. Okay?
Okay. All right. So I have to play the professor here. I can do that. Actually, I like that story because it illustrates one of the central findings from the psychological research on narrative, which is that we all have two roles to play in our lives: the main character and the narrator, right? Most of our lives, we just go about doing our lives. We live out the plot of our lives. But every once in a while, we stop and we step out of the flow of our lives and we reflect on them and we tell the story of our lives. And that's not an ability that we have from birth, right? I mean, babies don't have words, let alone stories. Most of us grow up as characters in a story told by someone else, usually our parents. But in adolescence and early adulthood, we get this cognitive ability to be the narrator of our own lives. And that ability is the seed of human agency. There's this famous philosopher, Daniel Dennett, and he says that stories are what people do. They are the human adaptation. Spiders spin webs and beavers build dams, and humans tell stories. They are the way we define ourselves and structure our lives. And if you think about our lives compared to that of a spider or a beaver, they are astoundingly complex. There's no way that a memory system could possibly hold on to all of the details of our lives. But that's not why we have memory in the first place. We don't need to just hold on to the past in some veridical way. And in fact, research on memory shows that we're not very good at holding on to the past in terms of its objective details. But what stories do for us is they allow us to make meaning of our lives. And it's that meaning that we do need. We need to hold on to the past so that we can make sense of the present and imagine the future. And stories are really good at that. So today, we have 4 students who've spent more than a semester working on one story, writing and revising this story of their lives. And we're so happy to share them with you tonight. Thanks.
All right, so without further ado, we have Aaron Greiner with OK.
It's a Saturday in late September, and I'm taking my first ambulance ride. I'm still hyped up on adrenaline from the fall I took just 20 minutes ago. The EMT asks me questions as we drift in and out of lanes, cars making way for us. It's probably just dislocated, she says, looking at my right knee. You'll be back climbing tomorrow. I picture myself, back on top of the wall, reaching for the last hold, knees sturdy on the footholds below, my mind knowing what lays ahead. I feel my heart beat a little less quickly in my chest. By tomorrow, I'll be okay. 3 hours later, after the tedious and painful process of sliding onto the x-ray table and then back to the hospital bed, the doctor comes into my ER room. Good news, she says, it's not dislocated. This is not good news. In fact, at this point, merely dislocating my knee is the best case scenario. Most likely an MCL tear. You'll just need to wear a brace for a while. I feel my stomach drop for an instant, but I bring it back. A brace for a month or two? That's something I can manage. She leaves and I flip back to a BuzzFeed article with gifs of puppies to pass the time. I smile. Then I laugh. I get a strange look from a passing nurse. I'm not on any painkillers. I'm okay without them. Then I'm back at school, and moving around is difficult but not impossible. Are you okay? Everyone asks. You're taking this remarkably well, they tell me. And I am. I can't sleep, but what I lack in rest I make up with for a cheery attitude. I'm going to be okay. It's Wednesday, and my first consultation. When the doctor's examining my knee, he twists it, and the kneecap dislocates again. I swear loudly, not at him, but also not at him. I straighten my knee, and I am okay again. The doctor pauses, and I can hear him working out the words in his head. You did quite a job here, says the doctor. You've torn your MCL, your ACL, your PCL, and your meniscus. Suddenly, I am not okay. I realize that I came to my appointment by myself, and I have never felt more alone. I swallow my emotions into my stomach, and they churn there. I can't concentrate on anything he says for the next 15 minutes. Rare case, full recovery unlikely, major surgery are the only words that punctuate through the haze. This is a career ender for any NFL player, he says. Well, I guess there goes that career. I get back to Olin, and the first friend I see, I just break down. It's the first time I've cried in a while. Are you okay? People ask. I don't respond. The next few days are filled with consultations, questions, and phone calls. I try to convince myself that everything will be okay, but I'm no longer sure that's possible. When I'm not okay, I meditate. I listen to Jack Johnson. I sit on the couch, and my friends sit next to me, and we talk, watch TV, and make jokes. I repeat the same information and hear the same results back. Rare case, full recovery unlikely, major surgery. My emotions become numb, occasionally spiking before icing back over again. On Friday, I find a new doctor who is confident and relaxed. And when I get home from the appointment, I get a phone call. Can you come in for your procedure on Monday? The lady says. Okay, I say. I don't sleep the night before my surgery. My right leg is now entirely black and blue from bruising. When I get into the hospital in the morning, I get a buzzer, like you might get at Panera. I secretly hope that when it goes off, there'll be a hot French onion soup with a warm baguette rather than the unknown hours that lay ahead. The buzzer lights up and vibrates. I say goodbye to my mom and get wheeled through hallways, doorways, up elevators, through more doorways and more hallways. I say hi to each new nurse who administers a numbing agent, a nerve block, or an IV drip. With each new set of doctors, I get closer to the moment that I am looking forward to and dreading at the same time. The moment when I will finally know whether I will be okay or not. I drift off to sleep on the operating table. I awake as we are once again going through doors, hallways, elevators, more doors, and more hallways, and finally to a room with a TV, a chair, and a bunch of machines. Good news, the doctor says, the surgery went well. The next few weeks are full of progress. I go home. The first night, the unbearable pain keeps me from sleeping, but eventually it goes away. Then I'm able to get up off the couch. I go back to school. Eventually I walk without crutches. Then I'm able to bend my knee just a little. Then I walk without a brace. The physical healing is fast and it feels great. Wow, walking already, people say. Even my doctor is surprised at how I'm progressing. Must be your positive attitude, my mom says. And for a while, I believe I'm back to normal, at 100%. So I set my expectations for myself high, like I would have at the beginning of the semester. I can get this done by Wednesday. I can make it to this meeting. I'm back, baby. I don't get it done by Wednesday because I can't concentrate. I can't make it to that meeting because I'm too tired. As I fail to reach my expectations, I start to question whether I will ever recover. I start to realize that while I may be improving quickly and my upbeat attitude certainly helps, I am still not okay. So I reset my goals and am able to slowly push them back up. No, I can't take that on, I learned to say. Before that day in the climbing gym, I had never come face to face with my limitations in a way that I could not rationalize, in a way that felt completely foreign and out of my control. Now, only 4 months into recovery and with many more to go, I have grown quite close with my limits. I've gotten to know myself in a way that I didn't before. I've gotten to know myself when I am not okay. Most days, I'm only reminded of my injury by the 6-inch scar on my leg. Other days, after a long flight of stairs, a tough PT session, or a pickup game that I can't play in, I'm reminded that I am different from before. Wow, looks like you're all healed, people say. Getting there, I respond, not knowing if I actually ever will. I'm not better. I'm not back to where I was, but I am okay. Thank you.
If the under 40 crowd would like to come fill in the floor, that would be awesome, and then some of the others can sit. That's all, it's all good, but there's lots more seats if you want to come in. That's right. It's very cozy. All right. Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Our next storyteller is Mimi Combe, and her story is Little Things.
Hello, everyone. How's that? Am I talking into the mic? Sounds good. All right. Is everyone who wants to come forward, come forward? Now's your chance. I'll smile at you. When I was about 4, I was given a pair of black nylon tights to wear to my grandfather's fancy 60th birthday party. Understand now that fancy occasions were, and continue to be, pretty foreign to me. My usual day consisted of running around outside with my friends at school, then coming home to run around wild and barefoot with my dogs and chickens. I spent my time making small houses out of sticks, stomping through the muddy puddles in the gravel driveway, and sliding down big round hay bales until every layer had been thoroughly spread across the barn floor. Dressing up for a fancy occasion was new to me, but I found that my usual running around worked about as well in a large formal ballroom and dinner hall as it did at home in the field and woods. Remember, I was 4, and it was still pretty cute and acceptable for me to crawl around under the table at a formal dinner. When I came home from the party, I went back to running around in the woods with my dogs, only now I was wearing black nylon tights and shiny black shoes. If you've ever met nylon tights, you may know that they are not ready for that kind of adventure. They had runs and tears in minutes. Rather than take this as a sign that tights are not appropriate clothing for the woods, I saw the tears in my tights the same way I'd see a scrape on my leg, in need of care and repair. I went in search of needle and thread. I don't remember learning to sew for the first time, but by the time this story is happening, my parents and Dodie, my grandmother, had taught me the basics. Dodie and I would make clothes for me to wear that were a combination of her excellent taste in clothing and my youthful enthusiasm for all things soft and bejeweled. Dodie's mother, my great-grandmother, also sewed, and it's her ornate, antique sewing machine, which I still use today. The sewing machine has its own table with 4 drawers to keep all of your sewing bits handy, and it was there that I found the perfect yellow thread to fix my black tights. This repair I made was not a professional one. The stitches were big, uneven, and excessive. But they did the job, and I was more than content. My tights weren't as good as new. In my eyes, they were better. A few days passed, and Dodie noticed the bright yellow stitches running up and down my black nylon tights. She has much more formally developed aesthetic sensibilities than I do, and to this day. And this is one of many opportunities she's had to kindly pass on some of her knowledge to me. In this case, she gave me 2 pieces of advice. First, she said, some things are disposable, nylon tights, for example, meaning that you wear them 1 or 2 times and then you throw them away. They're inexpensive, so next time there's a fancy birthday party, you just buy new ones. Next, she added, when you do have clothing that needs repair, it's better to mend using thread and fabric that matches what's already there. So, if you were going to mend your black tights, it would be better to use black thread instead of yellow. I firmly rejected both these lessons the way 4-year-old me did best. I resolved to do the opposite forever. Because somehow, even though I was usually a rapt audience when she was teaching me new stitches or how to use a sewing on this setting on the sewing machine, this advice didn't capture my attention. It wasn't for me. A decade and a half later, I have consistently stuck to that resolution that I made. I continue to repair things that were probably meant to be thrown away, and I continue to rejoice in using thread that does not match. My seams stand out proudly. It feels good to show my work and celebrate the way that the pieces come together. Plus, there's still some of that thrill I felt as a 4-year-old, breaking the rules. Now I'm in my 4th year again, this time at Olin. Here, I've been given access to engineering sensibilities much more formally developed than my own. One of the main reasons I came to this school is that we jump right in to grappling with engineering that has impact. And I'm definitely grappling with it, because I do want to have impact. But Olin's mission of saving the world and tackling grand challenges with revolutionary engineering seems like maybe it's not for me. If I were still 4, I could cross my arms and make a stony resolution in the face of this challenge to my values. But that's not how I am anymore. I've grown into this difficult and complex age where I have to have doubts and be anxious about whether I'm on the right path and reflect carefully on these things. I can't just tempestuously reject the idea that engineering can be used to solve important problems, or that engineers have a responsibility to use their skills and privilege to make a difference, because those big, important things feel true to me. But the type of impact that feels true to myself and my values is found in much littler things. I make these stuffed animals that are dinosaur-like creatures. Think Brontosaurus, except with this amazing mane that stands up like a zebra's. My mom's colleague commissioned one to give to her young daughter, Carolina, who had played with some earlier versions at my house. Carolina loved that creature. She took it on all of her adventures. Eventually, as will sometimes happen, a seam gave out. Her mom texted me a picture of Carolina and the stuffed animal with big, uneven stitches down its back. My heart melted when I read that she had learned to sew so that she could mend this creature that I made for her. This is the impact that I want to have. I treasure the conversation and connection that are born when people hold something I've made with my own hands, or notice the mending on something that I maybe should have thrown away, and ask me about it. The impact I want to have lives contentedly in the little things, like the uneven stitches of a kid learning to sew, because the little things grow up and go out into the world by being passed from hand to hand. Thank you.
And our last storyteller is Matt Brucker, whose story is Eating Your Words.
I don't like to be confrontational about things. I try to avoid causing issues when I'm on a team at Olin, and given the close proximity in which we all live and work here, you might as well always be on a team. I pick my battles wisely, or quite honestly, I avoid my battles altogether, which means that sometimes I go along with ideas that I don't necessarily agree with. I swallow the words that I feel rising in my throat in order to avoid being someone who unintentionally makes someone else miserable. Because I've heard enough stories and had enough firsthand experiences to know that not every team experience is enjoyable for everyone involved. But there are advantages to keeping quiet. It's not difficult to find roommates. I lived on campus with 5 of them this summer, in an arrangement that was laid back and amicable. For the most part. There was a battleground of opinion that formed over a seemingly innocuous topic: food shopping. Because if you go to Costco with 5 friends to buy bulk groceries without having mastered the nuance of food shopping, you'll be facing weeks of literally swallowing food you don't like. Sure, we tried to plan ahead to avoid negotiating right in those cavernous aisles of Costco. We carefully engineered a group grocery list. But lists are hard to stick to once you see the alluring choices and possibilities Costco offers. Nobody writes 2-pound tub of pine nut hummus down on a shopping list, but once you see it, you kind of need it. In the heat of the moment, everyone had their own strong opinions about what to get, and as just a single member of the group, I could only hope to make it to the checkout line with something resembling the items I wanted. We were all pulled in different directions, everyone reluctant to part with their hard-earned dollars, yet simultaneously drawn to our own individual vices. Some purchases were no-brainers. My love of pita chips was shared among everyone, so buying 2 bags every trip was a must. Not everything was so popular, though. Every item had to be voted on, and if you wanted to buy anything for yourself, you had to bear the cost and responsibility of owning a Costco-sized amount of that thing. So I chose my battles carefully. I wanted to splurge on a 4-pound bag of craisins, and despite complaints that we could never eat that many craisins, my persistence won over. We didn't eat that many craisins. I was less enthusiastic about buying yet another block of Gouda. Sure, it tasted okay, but it was kind of intimidating, this massive wedge with a weird waxy rind. We didn't really know what to do with it, which meant that it would sit in the back of the fridge unused long after we had consumed the cheddar and pepper jack. But I capitulated to keep the peace, although not without a little bit of resentment. When every dollar spent was my own, saving money was always a primary factor in my culinary decisions. Among my fairly thrifty suitemates, I stood out in my efforts to stretch my hard-earned dollars. Even items like Honey Nut Cheerios weren't safe from my fiscal scrutiny, especially when we could save 78 cents by buying plain Cheerios instead. So, once my friends grew weary from wandering through the aisles, I proposed a food that wasn't on our list: lentils. Lentils are bland, healthy, extremely cheap, and go with pretty much anything. In other words, they exemplified my summer goal of spending next to nothing on food without completely starving. I'd been thinking of them the whole trip, though I knew that they wouldn't go over well among my suite mates. But with my promises to take care of soaking, cooking, and figuring out what the heck to do with them, which probably would have happened anyway, my friends agreed to go along with my plan. With victory in sight, I set out to find the lentils. A simple task, or so I thought. But despite navigating those maze-like aisles several times, they were always just beyond my grasp. Eventually, I abandoned my search, and we made our way to the checkout with my ego mostly intact despite the losses of the day. After such a laborious effort, though, we needed something to bond over. At the food court, a literal hole in the wall conveniently located near the exit, we stuffed ourselves with Costco pizza. These limp, greasy slices, hot enough to burn the roof of your mouth, eaten on paper plates at these surprisingly small plastic tables. Now I could rest easy. The most mental energy I had to expend was deciding whether I wanted cheese or pepperoni, and since we each got our own slices, there was no need for consensus. My more adventurous friends even opted for the chicken bakes, these hot pocket-like hunks of dough filled with a slightly questionable chicken and bacon-based filling. A chicken bake is not something I would ever choose over pizza, and in the freedom of the food court, I didn't have to. After a summer of these Costco trips, the arrival of the school year brought new group interactions and battles to pick. Except now the stakes are different. When it came to multigrain versus wheat bread, I knew exactly where my opinions lay. Multigrain is clearly the superior choice. With team projects at Olin, though, sometimes the hardest part of making a decision is figuring out what my own opinion even is. But for the times when I do know, I'd like to think that my training in the aisles of Costco gives me a fighting chance at getting my team to buy in. Thank you.
Have a great rest of the weekend.
I was so proud of that. Erin was not.